Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is returning guest, friend of the show, Reinhardt Suarez. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I always love our chats, of course, and I think we've done this kind of like yearly roundup or maybe looking forward to the next year thing before, so it's going to be fun to do it again.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on for this. It's tough to schedule people in December, especially.
Oh, yeah, with all the holidays, yep.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I really do appreciate it, and obviously you have some good, some great stories out there in your own right. I mean, obviously I've had friends on before who are not heavily published, but, and it's a little awkward because people who don't publish a lot or don't have many books out there don't have as much to talk about as far as this show goes.
I guess I could go through just my very, very, very brief bona fides.
Sure.
So I have a couple of novels out, self-published. They are more, they're less fantasy, more kind of young adult, coming of age. But then on the other side, much more fantasy is. I also write on occasion for Magic the Gathering. I've done a few sets, the most recent of which was Phyrexia, All Will Be One. And, this coming year are quite a few sets are coming out. I do not as yet know if I am involved with any of them. There's some hope, though. That would be fun.
Okay.
It's all about fun.
Okay,
yeah.
You heard it here first. If you're a fan of those stories that he did for Magic, let's give Reinhardt the best thoughts at this time. That maybe we get some.
It's all good
stories if he wants. Hey, that's fun stuff. Me, I'm struggling with the idea of trying to submit to a horror publication, a horror publisher. For the first time, and I'm just like, I need to write the book first, which is the challenging part. I'm like, what kind of book should I write? Because my books, I think the main thing that most people might not know about my books that is tripping me up here is that they usually have a happy-ish ending. And that's kind of tricky to do in horror. I don't know.
I think you can have a happy-ish ending in horror. I think if you could ratchet it down to a bittersweet ending, I think that's where you get it.
Handle that.
Yeah. You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah. Because every time I think of the horror movies, I'm like, yeah, these are all really dark. The ones I like I'm watching The Exorcist 3 right now. I'm almost.
Oh, okay. That one's super. That brutal. One is very brutal. Yeah. You could make a case that it has a happy ending.
Okay.
It's definitely not a happy movie.
No, not happy at all. I watched about 2/3 of it, and I took a break. I'm like, this is. The writing in it is fantastic, though. I gotta say,
it's an amazing movie. It's actually, I like watching that better than I do the first one, even though the first one is a more complete movie. And now that I remember, I'm going to spoil a little bit for you. Not really, though, but there was some studio meddling in Exorcist 3.
Really? Okay.
So
is that ending maybe spruced up to be a little more hopeful? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. It's like the classic Charles Dickens, I think. Yeah, the Great Expectations, where he wrote multiple endings because there's like they're not going to like you after reading this book for 600 pages over months and months and months and years.
When you finish it,
you can't do this non-committal ending thing.
When you finish it, you should do a little bit of research. It's easy to find the writer's original ending. And
oh boy. Okay. So, maybe I will do that, or maybe I will sleep better at night without knowing that. But but one of the funnier things about actually the movie thing, the horror movies I've been watching lately is, they're dark, but they're not systemically dark. They're just like there's this horrifying thing happening, and usually it's not just this is just how the world is. People are getting murdered all the time by whatever evil force. I think that's maybe the scarier thing about the Exorcist movies, even though as a former Catholic, I never really was that scared of the demon possession thing because
I
never really believed in demon possession. I don't know.
Right. As a lapsed Catholic myself, I was terrified. In some ways, I'm still
terrified.
Movies.
They're scary movies, but the concept doesn't scare me. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. the concept scares the hell out of me.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
yeah.
That's very fair because I know lots of people. Yeah, I know. Like one of my big podcast influences, who God rest his soul, I guess is an ironic thing to say because he was an atheist. That's what my point was. Justin McCumber of the Dead Robot Society said that he was more afraid of stuff that even though he barely believed. I don't know if he was an atheist, but he barely believed in any supernatural elements at all. So he wasn't religious. And he believed, and he was really scared. Like, he was a horror author himself, and he was, like, more scared of supernatural horror than
that's
like, slashers and stuff. Which I find slashers a little more disturbing, honestly, because, like, they're just, I mean...
They're out there. They're real.
Those people exist.
Yeah.
I mean, I after I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was driving around southern Minnesota. I was for something. And I took a wrong turn, and I'm like, okay, this is how I die.
Yeah.
It was the remake, but I was like, this is like, I'm just waiting for someone to, I'm like, okay, I'm going back. I'm going to retrace my steps and get back on the highway, because this doesn't look like I'm going anywhere.
Right. You stop,
and I saw,
you turn right around, and then...
Yeah. I was going down this forested path, right? I mean, like, I turned off the main road, and this was right after there was a bridge near me that went out during the big flooding earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around... because I was looking down there, I'm like, oh wait, there's a trailer down this dirt road, off in the middle of nowhere, basically. I'm like,
that's
okay,
not creepy
I'm
or
not.
anything.
Nope, turn around.
Yeah, right.
I'm not asking for directions. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I have Google anyway. And
you made the right decision.
Yeah,
you made the right decision.
Chopped off by a chainsaw as a result. I mean, not saying that's likely, but again, I like to harp on the fact that, and it's a funny thing to me. And I probably brought it up on the show before, but the scariest episode of Supernatural that I ever watched was the episode where they went to Minnesota in season 1, I think, and that's the one where there's no elements of supernatural elements in the show. There are no monsters. There's no demons.
It hit too close to
just,
home.
There are just hillbillies about.
Yeah,
and I thought that was funny for Minnesota because Minnesota's a pretty civilized state, but then we also have some really deep territory too. Some old country.
Yeah. It's a big state area wise.
Yes. Yeah, pretty big. And then there's large parts of it where there's not that many people. Is I guess the part that makes it eerie.
So you are embarking on this.
Yeah.
Are you still like? Is the genre, the specific horror genre, open wide? Or are you?
Well, I'm looking at trying to make a creature feature of some kind, and that's why I'm like, it's also a struggle because I'm probably going to do something that feels like a slasher because I really like the slasher movies I've been watching, or something like The Thing, somewhere in that area with paranoia, human-like killer, something like that. But everything I keep going back to is too weird. I this one idea was like, okay, it's an AI killer. But the AI gets shunted into these weird hybrid creature bodies because they don't have bodies of their own, but they grow these things.
I mean, you had me at hello.
Really?
I mean, this sounds great.
Okay, so
I'm in.
That's what I've been brainstorming today, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go with that one because it just feels so sci-fi. Like most of these are going to be sci-fi horror. These concepts I'm looking at here because I know. Because otherwise you can't have a creature feature unless you have like normal scary creatures, right? Like bears or whatever. And that's possible, but I don't think you can, and I don't think there's a way to do it in a fantasy way, which is maybe the thing that bothers me slightly about it.
I think so. I mean, there's fantasy horror that I've liked, but I've liked it.
I've never read a lot
more as a tale.
Yeah,
like sci-fi horror is scary.
Right. No, I agree with you actually because there's no. I don't know. There's something about fantasy where it's like, okay, it's fantasy. It's just a little softer than sci-fi, kind of by default as far as the tone. Whereas if you're on a space station and suddenly there's an artificial creature hunting you, it just feels cold.
That's nightmare fuel, right?
I mean, that's probably what the book's going to be if I get around to writing it. I was like, okay, because I had some ideas that were much more far flung because the ideas that they're all pitched as kind of potential series for this particular submission type, and I'm like, okay, so having something like an AI, I mean, and honestly, it does resound with me a little bit because even though I'm not the biggest hater of AI, the AI slop on the internet is still terrible, and I'm like, what if that stuff was actually intelligent and wanted to kill you?
It's brilliant.
and had a body. There's just basically created creatures that don't make any sense. I think that's probably the most fun I could have with that, honestly.
I think it would be really...
It's kind of on point, on topic.
I think that would be really fun, and it could be scary, too. And for me, I like that element of horror that has that little bit of humor in it.
Yeah.
That's my
satirical
sweet spot.
at that point, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this idea I have. But I have so many other ones. But the idea is just get one down, and then I can maybe do
just
more
get one
later.
down and... Yeah, exactly.
If I like writing this and they like reading it, I can always do more.
Is that kind of what you have, what you're eyeing in the first part of the year?
Yeah, I guess, because this epic fantasy is taking a lot longer than I originally hoped it would. But, and because the quality of the writing is so important to me for this book, I just finished part 2, and it looks like it's going to be 7 parts, because I recently re-outlined the last 2/3 of the book or so.
Wow.
Yeah, I finished chapter, 28. And, I mean, so I had finished the first third of the book, basically. 28 or 29, and now and there's going to be 100 chapters or so, because I just, whatever. Because
that's what you outlined.
That's what I outlined so far. And it's very loose, but this is like the Egyptian samurai thing, and it's really fun, but it's also just it becomes kind of ungainly when I think about it, because I didn't... And this is a problem. I mean, I'll acknowledge this is kind of my writing advice, is that knowing where you're going is really important. And I really had a great start for this book. As you know, you did read it, and you gave me some pretty positive feedback on it. I had this great idea from the beginning, and I didn't really know where it was going to go, You
know what? I have to confess that I run into that a fair amount, especially with a book, which is one of the I have many reasons, but one of the reasons that it takes me so long. Mm-hmm. The book that I'm writing right now, which is, I mean, until it is done, it is the writing project that I'm doing.
Okay.
For this coming year, and I've just been trying to plug away at it. The premise I feel is pretty solid, pretty intriguing, mm-hmm. But I think about a month ago, I had stopped progressing forward, and then I decided I'm going to go back and actually try to figure out where the heck this is going. What is the whole... what do these characters... What are they going to encounter? What kind of story is this? I didn't have anything besides the fundamental premise, and that could take you a few chapters, I think. But then you come to decision points where you have to start integrating in the bigger story, and I couldn't do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you're going back to kind of revise to to open up a little bit.
Yeah, and it's usually I always tell people don't revise before you're write that draft.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, but I almost and I say that because I want to do that.
Right. It's just you have a bad habit there potentially, or something. Is that?
Oh, terrible habit.
Okay.
It's a terrible habit.
You would agree that it's a habit. Okay, sure.
It's without a doubt. I think
we're both easily in agreement that it was kind of detrimental to your productivity, at least.
Oh, 100%. I have no problem admitting that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've lately thought, I thought I was I'm a discovery writer, but maybe it's time for me to try more outline stuff, or more of a discover the outline and then fill it in kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Because, I mean, I've been going through medication changes and stuff, and I'm it's time to try it again. I think it's time to try different stuff. Techniques.
How's that been going?
I haven't tried it yet. I made a pseudo outline, and the outlines I make are going to be light because I'm not going to discuss. I'm still going to discover a lot of the story,
just to kind of point you in the right direction.
I just want a more holistic start where I know exactly what the progression is going to be like. I guess because
that makes
progression
sense.
is really important, in especially fantasy books.
Yes.
Not as big. I mean, and in horror, it's well, how many characters am I going to be able to include in this short novel? If I need to include characters that are just going to get ripped to shreds by whatever mutated freaks or whatever.
We'll just pace it out.
Exactly. That's why it helps to have an outline first.
Yeah, exactly.
The structure I'm working with.
Like Alien, for example, is the perfect pace.
Maybe
it's slower.
Alien's pretty long.
It's a burn.
Yeah.
But then everyone just got wiped out.
Yeah, spoilers. No.
Oh, sorry.
and hey, not everyone got wiped out. The cat made it for full spoilers.
That's right.
The cat and Sigourney Weaver. Anyway,
yeah.
I think everybody knows Sigourney Weaver survived Alien by now. I think that's not a spoiler. But the cat was one that people forget about.
Yeah. Well, I forget the cat's name, too.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with the movie where it's like that was one of the best parts of Alien to me is actually the fact that the cat lives is really amusing because, like, of course, it's a great little like realism touch, right? And also, you'd have a spaceship on a spaceship like that. You'd have to have a cat to catch rats and stuff, so it makes sense to have one, maybe more than one. Honestly, it's so big, but.
Well, it's also cool. The companionship.
Ship. It's an old ship, but it feels like an old ship of the a ship of sail or something thing where it does. It is a companion, but it's also got another job. Probably is the impression I got there. I mean, and anyway, I really liked that the cat lives not only because it's a literal save the cat thing that the screenplay does and that the creators of the film did, but it also is a funny. Like of course, instead of being utterly ruthless, that's the bittersweet part of it almost. Like the cat can survive, even if everybody else died.
Not everyone dies.
Practically, most of the characters in this movie are going to buy it, but some people are going to make it out, and you're going to like them.
Right. There are movies where everyone dies.
Yes. Could you point me in the direction of those so I can turn away from them?
Yeah.
Because I'm not really into. I mean, I think The Grudge is probably one of those. I've heard about that.
The original
both
one?
Of them, both the American and the Japanese Grudge are kind of like that, as far as I'm aware.
The one that for me is the most famous of those, and again, it's another spoiler, but Jeepers Creepers was the biggest downer. Oh my god!
Wow, really? I could swear I've not seen that one, but I would swear based on the title that it would actually be more of a rambunctious one. But that's actually
it is rambunctious, and then it's got such a downer ending.
Oh my gosh!
It's a quality. I mean, I like the movie. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I did not foresee that ending, and it sucked.
I really liked Nope is one with like a pseudo semi-ambiguous ending as far as how many people survived. But there's actually not that high of a body count in Nope because it's more like Jaws. It's more like Jaws than it is like anything else. That's the most similar thing I can think of.
It's really interesting.
It's Jaws with the creature flies. It's great.
Yeah, I remember seeing like trailers for that. I'm like, what the hell is this?
It's such a weird movie. It's like it's a Western. It's an African-American based Western. It's also a horror movie that's similar to Jaws. It's like, okay, this is a little crazy. It's a film. It's a film
like flying saucers or something like that.
Yeah. It's a meta film as well, obviously, because it's about trying to take pictures of things.
Interesting.
That's the thing, because they're just trying to prove that this UFO thing exists for most of the movie. I thought that was really cool. It's a UFO movie. It's a cowboy versus aliens movie. It's like this is a movie that it doesn't defy categorization. It's just everywhere, which is pretty awesome. I'd encourage you to give it a shot.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm hopeful for this coming year is to get back into enjoying and taking in movies and books, rather than. I mean, I'm sure everyone is guilty of this, but like wasting time just on the internet.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good resolution. I mean, it's not really New Year's yet for us, but as we talk, but that's a great resolution. I think I could go for that. It's like just pay more attention to actual stories and less attention to, garbage online. I want actual fiction in my life,
Yeah. Like quality stories by quality authors,
yep.
Especially classic authors that I never got a chance.
Oh, I have a recommendation for you in case you.
Well, I have a copy of Dune.
Okay, that's a good one, but actually, better book, Tigana by Guy Gabriel Kay. Fantastic.
Oh, yes. I think you talked to me about that before.
It's on my mind again because Lions of Al Rosan is another of his books, and because he does a lot of these like pseudo historical fantasies or downright historical fantasies like Lions of Al Rosan, which is basically Spanish reconquest, but also it's fantasized a little bit.
Okay.
So it's like I've been listening to that one. I'm listening to my Kindle app read me that one out while I walk the dog sometimes, and it's so cool. Good. I mean, this is only my second K book, but Tigana is so good that I cannot stress to you enough how good it is and how it scratches the deep itch for like sword and sorcery as well as epic fantasy for me.
Interesting.
And it's a single book, so there's no series there.
Oh, it's fully contained.
Yeah, that's
I like
a
it.
One and done. Just take on I mean, it's an 800-page book, but it's one and done.
Yeah. Well, it's like buying a couple books at the same time, and they're bound together. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, yes. But less like the Elric series that I read over the last couple of years. Elric is literally that. I mean,
I do want to pick up Elric. Like, number one, I need to like literally print out a sheet of paper that tells me the order in which I have to buy these books.
Yes, they're very tricky. It's the first one is just called Elric of Melniboné.
Okay,
that's the first prequel, and then the second one is Sailor on a Seas of Fate. You don't, so you should be taking notes, dear listeners, as well as right. No, I'm just kidding. And the third one is, and I believe the third one is the Dead Gods book, and then you can go back for the original trilogy is after that.
Because I picked up this strange book called Elric at the End of Time.
Oh yeah, that's a trip. I haven't read that one yet, but I've heard it's crazy.
I
spin-off,
went to the first page, and it's like New York City in like 1970, and you're like, what's going on?
I thought this was something else.
Yes.
Based on the title.
And based on the cover. You're like, here's an Elric story.
Little did we suspect Elric is a dimensional traveler. I mean, actually, that's pretty much normal for him, but I don't know what that book is about, the one you brought, what Elric at the End of Time is about, but I imagine that's involved somehow. If it's indeed set on Earth. Urban fantasy Elric is so crazy to me.
I believe it's set on Earth.
Or at least it's part on Earth.
I didn't read too much into it, because I had to stop and be like, okay, what's going on? I had to look up, and it's like if you're going to read this at all, you have to read it after everything else. I'm like, oh, okay.
I mean, it makes sense. It's at the end of time. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like a Conan story where it's like, okay, it's pretty self-contained because Conan's a mortal man in one way or another, whereas he's not. Elric is basically a demigod, right? My first exposure to Elric was actually in the Deities and Demigods book for D&D 2nd edition.
Oh,
that we had. One of my friends had it when I was a kid, and I remember seeing Elric and Moonglum in there.
Your friend had the first edition of that book.
Probably it was the 90s
because later editions, like I have a copy, and it doesn't.
Oh, and
have
they removed Elric. Yeah, that's a rare book.
It's a rare
wonder
book.
What happened to that copy because I'm like, I should try to track that down.
You should try and steal it.
No, I don't even know where that friend lives now, but. It's funny because actually that same friend gave me a bunch of copies of like really good comic books and manga and stuff, like the full run of Full Metal Alchemist, a full run in paperback because they were downsizing their collections of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Why the Last Man, Preacher. That's where I got all these.
Oh wow, comics. You got really nice.
And the fact is, I'm a huge FMA fan. Full Metal Alchemist was my first anime, and the one in 2003, not the Brotherhood. That's currently a big deal. Or that has been a big deal ever since it came out in 2000.
That's like the kind of a remake, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I know too much about this, but in 2003 there was like the original anime was coming out as the manga was still being released, so the ending is not official basically. Whereas Brotherhood is a remake. They're the same company made both of them, the same production studio made both. But Brotherhood is kind of the definitive adaptation of the manga, and the original one is just kind of like the vibes. It's really good. Okay. It's really good, and in some ways it's better than Brotherhood, but in other ways it's much, much worse. Like, the ending isn't that good. But everything else about it is pretty much perfect. In both cases, they're both very good. The funny thing about them is they're different genres, which is amazing.
Really?
Yeah, basically they're different subcategories of anime because the one in 2003 is much, much darker and more horror-themed, and there's less hope. Whereas the newer one, Brotherhood, is more like... It's more like a traditional shonen series or like epic series.
I see.
Where the character gets more powerful.
Give me that older one. I want to see.
No, that older one's really hard to find. I've been looking around for them. I just want to archive this thing because it was my introduction to this genre, this whole medium, and it's so good. Even though there's parts that are seriously flawed.
That's another thing that I'm trying to get more into. Like, so back in the day, I was a big comic book fan. Mm-hmm. Marvel, DC, that sort of thing. But now I kind of want to get back into comics, mostly to show my daughter.
Yeah.
And she already likes anime or anime style. So I wanted to get back into comics, but manga comics, and more into, certain anime. I know anime can get really, really dark.
It can.
And when we've talked about that a little bit in other conversations, thus far, I've really been enjoying, on the one hand, manga. I read all of Berserk up to the point at which the author passed away.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was like
Berserk's a classic. Stone
That was like
cold.
transformative. That was an amazing experience. On the anime side, I've been enjoying more like I don't know. There's a certain genre. I think they just call it sad anime.
Oh yeah, sad anime.
Is that really?
No, I'm just joking. I don't think anyone calls it that but me. I don't watch a lot of that myself.
But it's like kind of like emotional tearjerker.
Yeah, it's like Your Lie in April, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And Your Name, which is a little more hopeful, but some other ones that are not as hopeful.
Ultimately, very tragic, kind of downer story.
Yeah,
we were talking about downer endings earlier, and that's more your jam than mine.
I love this stuff. Yeah, I love it. Give me that horrible, sappy, dark ending. I just like it. I don't know why.
Yeah. Hey, well, all power to you, right? Because I wish I could write an ending that was not at least somewhat hopeful. I really do, because I would like to be more versatile as an author. And
most people like a happy ending.
I know, I do too. But I do want to be able to do the other thing. Does that make sense? Like, this is what I'm trying to. That's something I want to get back to totally, though. Now that I say it like that, it's like when I was really young, when I was like 18, I'm like, I'm going to write stories just because I want to get better at writing stories. How do you do that? Well, you write stories that aren't what you're used to. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, it's like exercising a muscle.
Yeah. And the fact is, I'm not used to writing an ending that's an utter downer, and if I'm going to write horror, it seems like this is a good opportunity to try that. But also, I can't do it totally because it has to have a series hook. There's just a lot of complications here. Anyway.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I'm trying to think.
There's ways to do it. It doesn't have to be everybody dies. It can still be a downer without everybody dying.
That's true. That's true.
Or, like, for example, like Alien Resurrection, which is admittedly less of a downer than most Alien movies, or than 2/3 of the other ones. Alien Resurrection, as much say whatever you will about it, the ending is actually pretty brutal because you see that Earth is just like doomed. I think, Anyway,
it is a family story, though.
It is, and Ron Perlman's in it. He's great.
Ron Perlman is in it. That's true.
Yeah, playing the same character that what's his name, the guy who played Jane, and basically he's Jane from Firefly, but with an R rating.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because that was that crew. That movie was directed by Joss Whedon. Whatever you think of him.
Oh, he just transplanted.
And
crew from Firefly?
The crew from Firefly came after that movie, so that movie was like the prototype crew for Firefly. Which is pretty interesting if you think about it as far as because I liked Firefly a lot when I was a teenager, and now I'm like, oh, okay.
I never
actually watch Alien Resurrection. Yeah.
I never actually saw very much of it. I saw little bits and pieces. I saw Serenity.
Okay.
And I think it's a really cool vibe. Mm-hmm. It's a story that like I would love to be able to write something like that someday. I don't know if I ever will.
Yeah. What makes you want to write something like that, though? Well, just toss you an interview question,
I love
space western or something.
Yeah,
else?
I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
Okay.
Giant Star Trek fan, and so I love that kind of space opera, episodic, where you have the crew and the ship, and it just feels awesome, and you're doing adventures. Cowboy Bebop feels the same way.
Oh yeah,
like
Cowboy Bebop
these really interesting characters all bound together with this ship, and they're just one big happy family, like cruising through the cosmos. I think that's awesome. I wish I could do that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I actually I tried my hand at that, but it was in my Pillar universe because I can't ever make things easy for myself.
Yeah. That is very true.
But I didn't write that. I didn't end up publishing that book because I dictated it, and then I was like, oh, this editing will be a beast. But I did finish that novella. The first one was pretty good. I mean, I liked the novella, but it was like, this is not gonna take off probably, and also, I just feel like I'm mashed into a pulp every time I try to edit that kind of dictation now.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, I that's something I had been thinking about recently, which is trying to put out books that are shorter, like a lot shorter than what I have been, like short novella, more episodic, of course, less expensive.
Well, I mean,
just to try to get stuff out there.
But,
they don't have to. You're right.
But because also ebooks at least tend to be pretty cheap. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Like the top end of an ebook is like $6.99, and I'm not saying you should price a novella that high, but like $3.99 is not a bad price for a novella.
But like and that episodic kind of space opera type story might lend itself well to that.
That's an interesting thought, right? I mean. And also, like a short novella could be like 100 pages long or less, and I find that really attractive as a length for a book. Partially because I just releasing something, and I really have hit on it. I mean, the thing that when I had a sales bump in October that was really consistent, but then it died away, and I think it happened because I published like 4 books in 2 months, even if they were all short stories and stuff. That's important to note is that it really helped my backlist. Just to put out new short things.
Priming the pump. I think it primes the pump.
And I never thought I was going to do it. I mean, I think you need to have the right amount of reviews and stuff, too. Because that was the catalyst I thought had done it. But I hadn't realized that I was also publishing consistently at the same time. Getting more reviews and publishing consistently. I guess I was kind of doing it right at that point. Yeah,
and thus far, that is the antithesis of what I have been doing.
Yeah.
So...
Fair enough. I mean, I haven't published it, but see, I slacked off in November. Like, I haven't published anything since Halloween. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, that's why I died away, because I know where I had any pre-orders going, and then I didn't have anything recently released. So it was shortly after Halloween, poof, flatline. But hey, that's just how it goes. So now I know better.
Yep. And maybe that's something to try in the next year. Is like,
yeah, definitely. I want to do. Like one small release and one medium release every month at least, I think has got to be the goal. Maybe not medium. Awesome. 2 small releases minimum.
Yeah, 2 small releases.
Just keep it going, because people like that short stuff. And if I get a series going that's made of short stories, that'd be even better than getting one made of novels, if you ask me. Because
I think
10,000 words, 20,000 words a story. Yeah, that's a good length for me.
I mean, I think if we can sell that, actually, like be able to produce that at a regular pace and it sells even just moderately well, that's something to really, that's a structure, that's a foundation, I think that'd be really cool.
It would be a big difference for me because like right now I've tried my hand at big books, I've tried my hand at little books. The thing about a big book is if you don't have anything to follow it up, it's just plunk, it's just a big rock in the river.
Oh yeah. That's what happened to me.
That's been my experience with these big books that don't have anything backing them up.
I have 2 books that are related to each other, but there were like 2 years between them.
Yeah, that's a pretty big gap
and that's a big gap. And like if I would hope that someone who picks up the first book, who happened to pick up the first book, would want to pick up the second book, but there's no velocity behind it.
Right. I mean, that's how it goes, though. I mean, also, I remember distinctly after publishing a bunch of novellas and broken up novels in 2017 or 18, I then started the next year by publishing my huge book, Origin of Storms. I think maybe it's novellas first. Yeah, I think it was novellas first. But that was a completely different genre, and it was a bomb. Did nothing. Even though it's a very good book, it's maybe one of the best books I've ever written.
Is it? You had did nothing back it up? Nothing came after it?
I don't remember if I tried to split into 3 novellas at that point, or I just released it. But whatever happened, it wasn't anything good. I mean, it was just like releasing it in like January, and it just was a flat line from the beginning, basically.
Interesting.
And maybe I just wasn't doing enough to pump it. I definitely didn't do enough to pump it. I know a lot more stuff I would do now. But it is kind of crazy how, no matter sometimes a book is just going to take off and sometimes it just can't, or it won't.
Yeah.
And other times you just need to back it up, right? And I think the backup part is going to be really important for me.
I think that's, as your recent experience shows, I think there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I need to revise how I see, I have very little time to write during the course of the day, just with all the stuff happening, and the job, and getting my daughter ready for school, and then picking her up after school. But there's got to be a way that I could structure it. If maybe, okay, so I have this big book that I'm doing. Maybe there's a way that I don't want to put down the big book, but if I could get 4 small releases throughout the year, which is not a lot to ask.
No, it's not.
That's actually releases. That's the difference. It would be actually things under my name out there, And if it's like even 1 to 2 months between them. Maybe that would be an okay enough cadence to be.
It might make a difference. Who knows?
Yeah,
especially if they're all in the same kind of genre category, right?
Yeah, or if they're related.
If they're related to each other, that's the best way to do it, honestly. My experience. But, or it's the strongest as far as publishing goes. However, the one thing I want to ask you is, have you thought of ways that you could actually write more words in a day?
I have started
or
to.
more words in a week or whatever, whatever period of time.
I've started to, and a lot of it, man, I was never that prodigious, but I am certainly much less prodigious after the pandemic.
Right.
I used to wake up far earlier and be able to write. A big part of this was that my daughter was an infant, and you feed her, you change her diaper, and then she can go around rolling on the floor, and you don't have to do anything with it. You can just, as long as you're watching her, make sure she doesn't roll into any broken glass or anything, you're fine. So
keep the broken glass on the floor, preferably.
Yeah, exactly. But now is a little bit more tricky. But there's got to be ways. Because
Well, I actually have a suggestion for you, and
yeah.
And it's just because when I think back on it, I don't mean to say this as like, I'm not trying to criticize you, of course. Obviously, we're friends, so I can say this. But I think you might benefit from actually trying to do some dictation away from a computer screen, just as an exercise, not something you're necessarily going to turn into a published work. But you can talk almost as fast as I can. I know you can.
Yeah, I think this is evidence on this.
Yeah, we have the recordings, we have the documents, but you can talk pretty quickly, and most people can talk a lot faster than they can type. So my thought is, if you just try telling a story out loud and record it, that might be a better way to get more reps. Because one thing I've noticed about myself is I'm a faster thinker about stories now than I've ever been, which is why I sometimes consider going back to dictation. Because when I dictate,
has helped with that?
Yes, very much. Because some people say it's like I've talked to people recently who are even on the show who are thinking it's incredible that you could do 6,000 words in a minute. In an hour, not in a minute. Gosh, too easy.
That would be amazing.
That'd be like literally 60 times faster than I do it. Which would be almost impossible for a human to even speak that. In fact, it would be. I'm pretty sure
it would be impossible.
It would just sound like a gerbil. But anyway, but the doing like 3 chapters, so 3 of my traditional length chapters in an hour, is still a temptation that I have from time to time. Even though if it's fool's gold to me, because it's not something that's going to turn out to be good, right? Like it's going to be very hard to edit that, and then it's going to be a big drag. But I recommend it because it means
story out
exactly because I could write 3. Because imagine if you write a chapter and a half in 2 hours. That's what I'm doing right now, more or less. It takes me 2 hours to write a chapter. But if you could write 6 times faster, and you could just have the story told 6 times faster, that might be handy. Not saying it's not a panacea. You know, it doesn't cure everything, but it is a good idea, I think, because if you used to telling stories without looking at a screen, that can be very interesting. It can make you think more about your stories. I
think you're right. I think it is worth a try. Definitely.
And again, mostly as an exercise, and you don't have to even transcribe them. You can just dictate them and see what happens. Or you could get a transcriptionist. I mean, that's the other thing. I think my stories would have been turned out a lot more high quality if I was able to hire a transcriptionist instead of relying on automated software to transcribe things. Because the transcription is where it all goes wrong. I usually say the story pretty well when I'm actually dictating.
Yeah.
Though granted, it's not as good as it would be if I just typed it straight, but it's so much faster. I mean, paying a transcriptionist might even be worth it for me. Be something I consider. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think that plus... I really do believe that, at least for me, and every writer is different, but going out and... Because I get so focused on write.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll be, primed for writing, like in front of my computer, and just like nothing will come out. I'm so unfocused. This past year, and I really have forgotten to go back to, reading good books and watching awesome movies and things like that
feel
inspire.
You up.
Yeah. You're right. I'm constantly on empty.
Yeah, no, that's
video games,
identify
right?
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, like playing video games. For example, I was telling you a little earlier. I had just, I won't say finished. I kind of beat Dragon Quest XI, and my daughter and I beat this game called Child of Light, which is kind of this hybrid platformer RPG.
Okay.
And, and I was very intrigued with both of them. For Dragon Quest, like, they do some... Dragon Quest, apart from other RPGs and even JRPGs, is very formulaic.
Okay.
Like, very, very formulaic. But on occasion, their games kind of throw a wrinkle. And this one had a real cool wrinkle that I was not expecting because I didn't spoil myself on it. And it threw me completely for a loop. This is very vague, but it had to do with story structure and, like, you go and you beat the game this is very general. You go and you beat the game, and then you discover a chance to, if you want to, redo parts of the game so that you don't suffer the losses that you did.
Yeah.
And it's like, and what does that do? And it makes you suffer the consequences of that choice. And I thought that was brilliant.
Okay.
I never seen that really done in a game to this epic level. Like, other games that I really like, I like the Life is Strange series, and the first one gives you that a lot. And that's kind of the whole impetus of that game. But Dragon Quest XI did it on a much grander scale, which was super cool. And it made me think of, like, could I do that same thing, or could I do something similar in a story in this non-linear way? It just got me thinking in a different mode, and I thought I really appreciated that.
Yeah. That's a really sometimes with those, like, really short stories, usually short, like, sentence level stories, where there's, like, this story reads the same backwards and forwards, or you read it in reverse and it undoes itself, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's more
like a poetry thing, but
that's where I come from. That's kind of like the heart of the kind of writing I like, and I actually went to school for.
Yeah.
So, when I write fantasy, it's kind of a weird fit. It's always has been. And when I write, like, more YA stuff, it's still a weird fit because it really, I'm sometimes fighting against this desire to, like, throw all these weirdo monkey wrenches into it.
Yeah,
it's the same as you.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you want to do more of the, I don't know, like timey-wimey stuff than I do.
I do like the timey-wimey stuff. That's true.
But that's why I was actually going to say I have an anime recommendation for you, anime and manga. If you have,
sure,
definitely Attack on Titan is like
okay.
100% up your alley. I can't tell you why, but it's amazing, and it does timey-wimey stuff. I guess is why I would tell you that. But
I didn't even know that.
That
does make me want to see it.
See in this show, but it makes complete sense when you understand what's going on.
Okay.
And it is totally crazy as far as the actual like events. And the thing about this is that the show is always foreshadowing because there's a lot of flashbacks, flash forwards. They move around in the timeline a lot, even in the normal show. And it kind of is like, oh, so that, and so by the time you realize there's some time manipulation stuff happening, it's just a mess. It's
already been happening.
It's already been kind of happening to you as the viewer. That's why the show is masterful. I don't know how the manga does it because I haven't read the manga, but the show does this in like the perfect way to foreshadow the fact that there's going to be. It's complete.
Ended.
Yeah, it's complete. There's a few movies at the end. There's like a mini series at the end, and it's 4 seasons, really 5 seasons, because the so-called final season is like 2 seasons long and took place over multiple years as far as release. It's also just a great military fantasy story. So, at least the first half of it is basically, and then the later half it gets weirder, and that's the thing I like about it so much. Because at first you think it's like, okay, this is just like, okay, we're fighting basically giant zombies. Okay, great.
Which is
it's
what
already a
like,
fun concept.
You think, right? It makes you think that by the posters and the advertisements.
Yeah, and the beginning of the show is very focused on how terrifying these giants are, the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
But then we quickly find out there's more to it than that, and some people are going to be turning into Titans and stuff, and so it's a mech show, and then it's like, and then it becomes something even weirder. But, yeah.
I mean, that sounds good to me. I will try it.
There's many a chance to subvert expectations in the show. The twists are everywhere. And I
like those. I like the twists.
My twin brother put it best. Yeah, right? And my twin brother put it best when he said, it's a mystery box show. And then I would add that it's a mystery box show that works. Unlike most of them.
Unlike most of them.
There's a satisfactory answer to almost every question you're going to ask when you're watching Attack on Titan.
Oh, man. You mean flashbacks to Lost.
Well, no, but Lost is a show that's not like that.
I know. That show pissed me off.
Yeah, I didn't watch much of it. But, like, the polar bear I've heard is never explained. Anyway.
It is. It's just stupid.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. But that's the thing. I think that Attack on Titan does get a pretty bad rep because of the main character is also horribly unlikable for a large portion of the show. But that's
that's interesting.
I think that's up your alley too. I just think
that is also up my alley. I like flirting with. I mean, the character I'm most associated with in Magic the Gathering is very unlikable. Mm-hmm. Except for some reason, I don't get it. I write this guy to be unlikable, but people ended up liking him, and that mystifies me.
No, I actually, that's a great subject, actually, because I've noticed that myself with some of my stuff. And I talked about this recently with Charles Brakefield and Roxanne Berkey. And it was my last episode that I recorded as of this. But where I mentioned, I actually talked about one of these characters who was a side character in Origin of Storms, but in my novel, Origin of Storms. But he was like, I liked him so much. And I think other people see him as kind of repellent and horrible, but I actually like the character because I felt like I got him. I understood him. And I feel like that maybe when you deliver that as a reader to the reader in a way that they understand the character better, I think you're onto something. That's when the people really like him. I think that's maybe the reason I think like some of my favorite characters are just horrible, right? I mean, horrible people. But they're just fun to read about. I mean, I think of like most of the Joe Abercrombie books have characters like that in them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I
think some of my favorites, right?
I think Joe Abercrombie was a real, so.
But to go back to, sorry, I'll mention one thing. Sorry, I interrupted you. But like that book Tigana has characters like that as well. It's deeply human in how it portrays its characters.
I'll totally pick this up. This sounds great. Now I have 2 giant books I have to read.
Yes.
Dune, and Tigana.
Yeah. But at least Tigana is a complete story. You probably should read Dune Messiah if you want to get the complete-ish original.
Right, that's the second one, right?
Yep, that's the second one. So I've heard, I mean, I recently got recommended that God Emperor of Dune, which is on my shelf looking at me right now, the big worm on the cover. It's like, I've never read this one, and I'm like, I should read it because that's what I mean. People they're saying like, you can skip that other stuff, just read the fourth book after Messiah. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot. Children of Dune is like a really hard book to read. That's the one I got hung up on.
Is it just really?
It's
really
a weird
thick?
one. It's weird because the characters are very unlikable, and they're very and there's new characters, right? It's a new cast basically. The main characters are different for various reasons. And they're very unsympathetic. Or creepy even, which is fun, but it didn't work for me when I was reading it back when I tried to.
Like, when I was, the character in Magic that I was writing is Tezzeret, who is a toady. He's like a crony, always the henchman of the big guy.
Never the big bad himself, though, right?
Yeah,
Not yet.
But his origin is really interesting because he grew up like dirt poor, like disregarded by everyone, spat on by everyone. His parents were killed by like rich people, and they didn't care, and they got away with it.
Wow.
Like he has a hero's origin. He has like the tough, scrappy dude who made something out of himself. But what he learned was like the world is hard, and you kill people before they kill you, and you take what you deserve, or you deserve what you take because you have to take what you deserve. Yeah. And so I wrote this guy like this. I mean, I didn't make up his past, but
the portrayal of him, though, yeah.
What I portrayed him as like almost jealous of the good guys. He's because the good guys in Magic are often like princes and grand heroes who are feted upon. Yeah, and he's like this. He came from this dirt poor, he came from nothing. Unlike the heroes, who, some of them who've gotten 3, 4, 5 second chances, like grew up as like with silver spoons in their mouths, and so I wrote him as jealous of that. I wrote him as like I'm tired of hearing about all of you heroes who think you're so great. Like you don't know anything about anything. You've never experienced real pain. And I think that resonated with people.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't anticipate. I was just putting it together. I just reasoned it out from his backstory that was given to me anyway.
See, that's development. That's what they call character development, I think.
I guess so.
Usually it's like the characters shown to have hidden depths, but sometimes it's just you realize what they were always like. By a portrayal. And it's interesting with this story where multiple authors write the characters, right? Because, you have a different take on that character than I think other people do, at least to some extent, but then you all have the same information going into it. So it's just how well you are able to portray it, really. And your point of view on how that character would think about their supposition and stuff. So
my hope is that I'll get another chance to write this character in the next year. Who knows? I might not.
Who knows? Roll the dice.
But I mean, like, I'm looking forward to it. 2025 is going to be a crazy year. It is. Yeah. It is. 2024 was fairly nuts. So, but all we can do is look forward.
Yep. And I mean, I'm looking forward to trying different techniques. I'm looking forward to experiencing more stuff. More movies, more TV. More books. I mean, definitely books. I mean, maybe not more TV, honestly. I've been really off the TV bandwagon this year.
Me too.
Watching movies and animated stuff sometimes is what I want to do, as far as my media consumption, as far as my screen media, anyway. Yeah, whereas I really do. I want to read more books, and I recently have been hankering. Like I'm hankering to get back to Lions of Alrasan, even though I've already read this part before, and I gave up on the book years and years ago when I started it. Because whatever reason, I was going through a really bad ADHD spell at the time, and like I just couldn't finish anything. It's kind of funny because that goes back to like the one book that's always sitting next to me, but I've never finished it.
What is it?
China Mieville, Perdita Street Station.
Oh, yeah. I tried reading that once.
It's really difficult.
It's very hard.
It's a very it's an intensely long and complex book that's also very,
so
very
detailed.
slow.
So detailed, meticulous.
It's beautiful, but it's
amazing.
difficult, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with this book, except there's something a little flawed with me that I can't read it, but it feels just like, it doesn't feel like anything's lacking in the book. It feels like something's lacking in me as a reader.
Yeah.
Or different about me as a reader that I don't want to do.
It's a book that you have to devote yourself to for a while.
Yeah. But you see, I would love to, maybe that's the thing I'm missing then. And it could go both ways, because you could go all the way to the reading and the writing, you know? That's how I kind of see it, now that I think about it, is that I don't dedicate very easily to anything. You know, I don't, like, put myself into a series for the long haul. I'm not a huge fan of anything as far as novels go, right? I'm not a big novel fan anymore.
Yeah. A novel series, for me, is, like, they're hard. For me, it's really hard for me to get into a series. Like, I think the last one I got into was the Age of Madness.
Oh yeah, Abercrombie again. Yeah,
by Abercrombie, and I was just reading, and then as soon as I finished the book, I drove to the bookstore to get the next one.
Cannot wait for shipping.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, I'm going to the bookstore. I'm gonna go get
cool. It. Yeah, on your recommendation, I actually got those for my twin brother, and I have the ebooks. I still haven't cracked them because I know. Because, you know, when you're about to take the drug you're going to love the most, you should be careful.
Yeah.
Else you get carried away.
Those will suck you in.
Yeah.
They will suck you in. They're incredible. I don't know why they haven't tried to make a movie out of his books yet.
They haven't made a movie out of Brandon Sanderson's books yet. Come on.
That's okay.
I don't foresee this being a likely thing to happen anytime soon. Because, like, you know how long it took for them to make a TV series out of Game of Thrones, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It was like 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah. And the Wheel of Time series that's being much maligned now is, you know, also there's like 30 years older, later than the books, you know? So it takes time for this for especially fantasy stuff to make the screen, unless it's got a big zeitgeist behind it, like the old, like Aragon or whatever, like that had this big push when it was just coming out.
The dragon.
That was the one that's it's not a particularly good book in my opinion, but the movie was also even worse. So anyway, that's gonna say the hot take right now. The movie was a big disappointment. And I didn't even like the book.
Okay.
I know here first.
I have one movie / book that maybe I'll skip.
Yeah, maybe you don't worry about it. Anyway, I don't want to be too harsh on it. I know a lot of people love Aragon. It wasn't for me at the time. Anyway, and I was of the age where I was like the right age for reading that book because it was like big for teenagers in my cohort.
Yeah, it was a big.
And it didn't do it for me though. At the time I was reading a lot of card though, so can't really say I like those books that much anymore either. It's kind of embarrassing. Like Ender's Game and stuff is great, but there's a lot of weirder card books, including one that I've recommended on this show, Heart's Hope. Very good book, but it's so weird and dark. And it's not in a way that's like at all fun either. A lot of the time, it's like a very strange book. Especially because I'd read one of his books on writing, and I thought, oh, this should be fun. It's Orson Scott Card's doing fantasy, and it's like the darkest fantasy book I've ever read.
Oh, wow.
Bar none.
You're actually making a recommendation.
Yeah, I am. No. Well, for you, maybe, but some people... there's big content warning on that book, too. Anyway. Reinhardt, the battery's almost gone, and our hour is almost gone, too, so... Recommend to people where they can find your work online and what they should be looking for.
You basically can find links to everything I've done if you go to thereinhardtexperience.com. It's all one word, thereinhardtexperience.com, and then you can find all my magic stories are free, so you can use that to find all of them, or there are also links to my books on Amazon and other various stores around the web.
Fantastic. Reinhardt, here's to another year of the show, the writing, all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
And, I look forward to chatting with you in the future, my friend.
Yeah, me too.
All right. take it easy, everybody. As for this podcast, you can find more of us at not mentalcellarpublications.com. TimNiederwriter.com is the current website. And yeah, and you can there's covers for all my books there. The covers are all links, so you click the link, and if the book's available, you can find it. It'll take you universal book links. Yes. The one cover that's not available yet is the one I'm working on right now, the Mirror Throne, which was up for pre-order, but is now not up for pre-order because I blew the pre-order months ago. Maybe I'll be able to dedicate my heart to that one, but it's so far been tough. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you next year, which is next week. Bye-bye.